Agree to disagree, that's the way it's gotta be. Tuning out in harmony. Agree to disagree, that's the way it's gotta be. Tuning out in harmony. Disagree.
Hello and welcome to the podcast Agree to Disagree. Today we have a very special guest, a female powerhouse in the financial world. In India, we've grown up praying to Goddess Lakshmi. But praying for wealth was never the problem. Understanding it was. Understanding it was. Because for generations, money has been power, just not in the hands of women. And that's exactly what our guest today set out to change. Priti Rathi Gupta, from being at the helm of affairs at Anand Rathi to producing films and now building Lakshmi, she has constantly bridged worlds and, more importantly, the financial gap. Through Lakshmi, she's not just building a platform, she's building a shift from hesitation to confidence. Because maybe, just maybe, praying to Goddess Lakshmi is not enough. Learning to manage your Lakshmi is. Please welcome today Priti Rathi Gupta. Welcome to the podcast, ma'am. Okay, so first, most entrepreneurs today follow a typical path. They go to college and then they work with their parents sometimes and then they go and start their own business. But you were different. You had children at a young age, you got married early, you didn't have an Ivy League tag. So where and how did this begin for you?
Great question, first of all, Vivaan. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be talking to somebody as young as you. I've never done a podcast with anybody as young, so super excited. It's a great question, actually, and many times, I look back on life and I think about it, and I remember that all along, the thought in my mind was that no matter what life serves you, you've got to make the best in those circumstances, right? There is, fortunately or unfortunately, a sort of stated path for people to follow. That didn't pan out for me the way it was, stipulated. So I always say that I've lived my life in reverse. So I got married early, had children early, then studied, then had one more child, started a business in between somewhere. So it's been a very sort of, a fragmented journey. But eventually, I think it all fell into place. And, I want to actually share this. I was studying at Stanford. I was doing an executive education at Stanford. And the Stanford School of Medicine, they had just published a paper which they shared with us, which is called the Map of Life. And what it said is that today the map of life is changing. So what was that stipulated pathway that you study till these many years, then you work for so many years, and then you retire, is no longer tenable. Why? Because most of us, thanks to medical science, thanks to the advancement, everybody's talking about longevity, we're going to live probably till 100 years old. Now imagine you study till you're 25 or 22, then you work till you're 60, and then what do you do from 60 to 100, right? So such a long retirement with so many experienced people out of the workforce is not even great for the economy. So what they suggest is that life will be lived very differently. So your map of life is changing. So you may study, then you may work for a bit, then you may take a sabbatical, go back to studying, and in between you will have family, marriage, kids, all of that happen. And I'm sitting there in class and thinking, oh wow, I've actually lived my life like this, right? So in some sense, I think that map of life for people today is changing. And I'm glad mine turned out the way it did.
Do you think in the future entrepreneurs are also going to have to adapt to this new map of life?
Absolutely. Totally, because if you look around you, you'll see that people who've set up businesses or entrepreneurs who've started businesses, they come with such rich experience, right? And entrepreneurship is one about actually the risk-taking ability to put your neck out and say, okay, I'm going to start something, run this business, get all the resources together. But it's also about a lot of different things, like how do you manage a crisis? How do you manage, look at the markets today, right? If you're in the business of investments, then you say, how do you manage such, sort of difficult cycles in the markets? Now, all of this, if you've already experienced, imagine so much you bring to the table, right? So I think entrepreneurs' map of life will definitely change, and it is changing. If you look around you today, there are serial entrepreneurs. People start new businesses at every age, right? Which is great. I mean, I've always looked up. Absolutely. Well, for me, I think for me, an example was my father. So he started Anand Rathi. When we started Anand Rathi actually together, my father was 46 years old. So I think I've learned probably that's been the ideal. So yeah.
So for like the audience who doesn't know, what actually is Lakshmi?
So Lakshmi is the goddess of wealth. We pray to her in our country. We pray to her for wealth and prosperity. And I just realized that women were, in our country, women were called Lakshmis, but they weren't being Lakshmis. They weren't creating their own prosperity, their financial security. And therefore I said, okay, there needs to be a platform that powers, and not my words, I never say empower, because I believe that the attributes to manage money really well already exists within women. They just need to trust themselves, and they need to have a platform or an ecosystem that allows them, that powers them to actually use these attributes. So Lakshmi is a money platform for women where they can do all things money, right from payments to savings to investing to borrowing, all of it. But the final aim of being on that platform has to be able to create their wealth, to create their financial freedom.
Like you said, power is money in today's society, but women in so many households even today, they earn money but they don't get to control that money. So do you think financial independence is more about like the income levels or about decision making power?
I think money, one, is an enabler, right? In everything that you need today, you need money. So having the agency or the ability to decide what this money will do for you is the primary goal of having money, of creating, your wealth or your savings. But of course, it, like you rightly pointed out, it allows you to make decisions, life decisions. What we see also is that apart from the fact that women don't manage their money, and because they don't manage their money, they land up in situations where they don't want to be. It could be a difficult job, it could be a difficult relationship. A lot of the times, because money becomes that hindrance, that obstacle, because in her head she's thinking, oh, but I don't have enough money, or if I don't do this, if I don't stay in this situation, I will be left without money, or I will be in a very difficult situation. So I think money powers your life in all aspects. Women actually, particularly for us, money is not just the decision making power, but it is also the ability to make a difference. So it's about ourselves, yes, but when we have money, we will always look to invest it or give it back into our families, our children. Children are always our primary goal, right? So our families, our children, our society. You'll always see that women are always, they are typically the ones who are very inclined towards creating a better life for people around them. It could be your staff, it could be your colleagues, other than your family. So I think money in the hands of women definitely allows them to make decisions, but also I would say allows them to make a difference to the world the way they would like to.
Yeah. So first you were the managing director at Anand Rathi. Then you completely shifted your profession and you started Ishka's films, or you produced films. But then you started a completely different life by starting Lakshmi. So where did you even get this idea, and why would you take such a big risk?
Well, that's what entrepreneurship is about, right? Taking risks, but always informed and measured risks. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, the Anand Rathi journey was actually very, it was a startup. We started Anand Rathi 32 years back. At that point in time, even that was a startup. And then, we came together as a family, started it, grew it. I set up many, many businesses within it. And then Ishka actually just happened, Vivaan, because it wasn't really something that I decided that, okay, I'm going to start making films. But I'd worked on a sort of an idea of creating a film fund for our wealthier clients, because at that time everybody wanted to be a part of the media entertainment space. And when I did work on that, I realized that it's not a very what should I say, it's not a very a true financial product, because it's very difficult to tie in the entire metrics of what return it could generate. So it was a very high risk proposition. But while I was working on that, I realized that there's a very big opportunity to create content, which, by the way, my children then weren't watching any Bollywood films. So, I wanted to make content that they would also like to watch, because they were already watching a lot of content on OTT. And I said, why don't we create content like that? And that was the whole idea. And that's how Ishka started. And Ishka Films, actually, I started completely on my own. And it was part of, while I was still running Anand Rathi, it was something that I set up on the side to create films, to create content that has a very long shelf life. And it was also an ode to my mother, Vivaan. She was the artist in the family. And she would always nudge all three of us siblings, why don't you do something in the arts? And we lost her when she passed away. It was literally an ode to her to say, I want to do something which keeps her memory alive and also her legacy alive.
Yeah. So, what do you think teenage boys and even teenage girls should do today to manage and save their money better for the future?
Okay, but your earlier question I didn't answer fully, by the way. I didn't answer why I started Lakshmi. Should we just continue that and you can take this question again, yeah? You're going to edit all this, right? Yeah. Okay. And then why did I start Lakshmi? Because I think there is a point in time in everybody's life where they want to use all their experience and do something far more meaningful and impactful. Being part of financial services for 30 years, I realized that women were not a part of it. They were not accessing financial products to create their financial security. And I think it was just a great time, because I was studying at HBS. So in the classroom, I pitched this entire new idea about a platform where women can come and manage their money. A platform that is built as per their behavior. We have different life stages as women. The way we think about money is very different. So something that is suited to their behavior and creates wealth for them. And I came back to India with a huge validation that yes, this is a great platform that I can run, set up. In my head, I said, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? Yeah. Right? And that's how I called it Lakshmi in the Howard campus, came back, and still, decided to name it Lakshmi because that was the most suited name. Yeah. Yes, it was a huge risk, but like I say, you take measured risk. I knew that I had the understanding, the capability of really creating something like this as an independent entity. But I was lucky that it just all went really well. because like I said, you put your resources, you measure your risk, and you say, okay, you do scenario planning. What happens in the worst case scenario, right? And to me, the worst case scenario was just nothing compared to the best case scenario. So that's how Lakshmi started.
Yeah. So, what can teenage boys or even teenage girls do today to manage and save money better for the future?
So I think this is something that you need to learn very early on in life, and I'm glad you asked that question, because today teenagers are way smarter than we were when we were teenagers. You have so much access to information. You have so many tools available, right? So the first step is to get the information and the knowledge, but to get the right information and knowledge. So sort of do a checklist. I always say that there's a lot of money advice available out there, right? But you have to be sensible and saying, whom am I taking this advice? Where am I seeking this information, right? And once you have put together credible sources from where you can get this information, and do some basic learning, and always start with an actionable. So say I have X amount of money, what am I going to do with it? If I have to make a choice, how do I make that choice? So go through every asset class or different places where you put money, and then based on that decide, okay, let me at least start with some amount of money. I think teenage girls and boys should actually tell their parents that please start an account for me where I can start investing my savings. And it's okay, you may make mistakes, but you learn early on. Invest with small amounts of money and say, okay, how do I do this? But always, the best way that I recommend is start with one goal. Investing is a lot like driving a car. When you set out from home, you don't sit in a car and say, okay, I'll go wherever the car takes me.
Yeah.
You always put a Google map, right? You say, okay, that's my destination. So even in investing, choose one destination. And I usually recommend that, teenage children set up a destination of their own education fund. So you can start by saying, let me create my own education fund. So let me start thinking, where am I going to study? How much money will that need? How much money do I need to put in today for that money to grow to that point in time? To that much at that point in time. And that will give you a great understanding of how money works. So begin by that.
Okay. So hypothetically, if someone gave a teenager, or rather in fact anyone, 1,000 rupees, where do you think you'd invest it? Like in gold, silver, copper, mutual funds, stocks, or maybe even crypto?
Well, so the first question, if somebody has 1,000 rupees, they need to ask that, what do I aim to get out of this? If this is money that's meant for my future, then I would typically just put it in 3 different asset classes, which is gold, debt, and equity. I need nothing else, right? And you understand this, gold is typically investing, but I would recommend all of this be invested through mutual funds. Because you're starting your journey, you already have experts as mutual fund managers who will do that for you. So start by dividing that money between gold, debt, and equity, right? If you're very young, I would usually recommend that you should put all your money in equity, because you have time that allows your money to compound. And that's what equity is all about, right? But if you really want to experience all asset classes, then you divide that money between these 3 asset classes, a higher chunk in equity. If this is for your future, if this is just your fun money, if your financial needs are taken care of, your financial future is taken care of, only then do you put this money into what I call emerging asset classes like cryptocurrencies, etc., just to experience them, right? But I always say that should be your fun money. In fact, I use a term called idiot money. Money that you don't care even if you lose, but you learn something, right? And 1,000 rupees is a good cost to pay to learn.
Yeah. So, do you feel that people in this generation should invest in real estate or no?
I don't know what you mean by this generation, but I definitely know that today the Gen Z real estate is not an asset class that they prefer. See, you have to go back into history to say, why do we invest in real estate? in the olden times, there was only two places where we could put money. It was gold and real estate, because these were the only things that you could touch and feel, and that had a store of value. Yeah. Today, as times have evolved, there are better places, better instruments to park your money in. Real estate becomes, even today in our muscle memory, that one place of security, because even back then it gave us a sense of security. So you'd put money into a house because all of us, my generation feels a home gives me security. But today the Gen Z and a lot of the millennials don't feel that. Because one, they are not tied to a particular place. They don't know, they are happy to say, okay, 5 years down the line, I may move to a different city, a different place. Even within, say, somebody living in Bombay may say, I want to live in Bandra for a few years. I want to live in, maybe Nariman Point for a few years. So when you do not derive your sense of security from a home, but more from the other corpus that you've created, investments you've created, I think real estate becomes irrelevant in your investment theory, right? And I do see that a lot of youngsters today are shying away, because the truth is also that when you buy real estate, you get into a long term, you would take a loan, you have to pay EMIs. That does compress your lifestyle. So they're happier paying rent, because sometimes the rent is cheaper than paying the interest that you do. So a lot of people are moving away from real estate, and then it comes with its own set of responsibilities, right? You have to pay, property tax, you have to pay a lot of these things that come around, maintain that property, all of those. So yeah, that shift is definitely happening. And it'll be interesting to watch that by the time it comes to your generation to take decisions, what you do.
So the very external costs associated here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in school, they teach us about Shakespeare, they teach us about calculus and quantum physics, but they don't really teach us about money and financial literacy. So do you think that financial literacy should formally be put in syllabus and put in schools?
Absolutely. Bang on. I think, money management, see, we learn some of the concepts. We learn compound interest, but we don't learn how it applies. So I think it's very important to then use everything that we learn and apply it to how does it make your money work. I think financial literacy should be introduced in schools right from the time that you are typically taught to put money in piggy banks, right? At home. So 5, 6, 7 is when you start learning about saving. Then you slowly develop into, okay, where can I put my money? What does interest mean? What does compound interest mean? How does my money compound at different instruments? Unfortunately, because that is not taught to us, we go through our school education, we go through our higher education, we may become doctors, engineers, maybe space scientists, whatever. All of it aimed to, one, fulfill some purpose within, but also to earn money. But when we've done with all of that, when we start earning money, we don't know what to do with that money. And therefore, we actually lose the ability to actually create for our money to work hard for us, for money to create value for us. So it has to be something that you should know definitely by the time you start earning money. Yeah. So it definitely needs to be part of curriculum, and I hope your podcast reaches all of these policymakers so that they introduce this in schools and colleges.
Yeah. So basically, after say a business makes profit and they make money, generally these businesses don't know what to do with that money, or if they have to reinvest it, if they have to keep it to themselves or things like that, right?
Yeah.
So these should be brought from your early days in school and should be taught from back then.
Absolutely. See, there are two things to it. One is personal finance, which is how do you manage the money you earn, or whether it's in a job or as a businessman, right? By a business person. So that's one part, that how do I create wealth? How do I create safety nets for myself? That's personal finance. And then there is the business finance, which is also important to understand, that when you start simple things, like when you start a business, do you put in all your money, or do you go to banks and borrow? What does it mean to borrow money? What does it mean to get equity partners in? What is the lowest cost of starting a business, right? Cost of money becomes very important in business. And then when you make profits, what do you do with it? How do you reinvest it? So structure of businesses, structure of finance and businesses is a completely different topic, right? Which ideally should again be taught, a lot of, I think, business schools teach it, but not every entrepreneur goes through business school.
Yeah.
So it should again be a part of your higher education.
Yeah. So AI is changing like almost every industry today. So how do you think it's going to change how people spend money and manage money?
I think AI is going to change and touch every aspect of our life, right? Today if you go to Claude and say, please make an investment plan for me, it will make an investment plan for you, right? So firstly, you need to know how to give it the right prompts, because money management is very personal, right? You and I could be the same age, but the way we are, the outcomes that we require from our money, our fears, our opportunities, our responsibilities may be way different. And therefore, a financial plan for both you and me cannot be the same. So you need to give it the right prompt to say, this is where I am, this is the outcome I require, this is what I think about money, and it will give you a plan, right? But remember, in everything in life, the human touch cannot be taken out, right? So it's a great, AI can give you a great plan, but you have to exercise your own analysis over it to say, okay, this is a plan. Now let me look at, will it work for me given how I think of money? Is it suited to me on every life stage of mine, right? So applying your own human touch is very, very important, right? You have to also understand that how does AI give you a plan? It picks up all of that data that's available, right? AI doesn't necessarily classify it as right, wrong, good, bad, right? It picks up data, and actually I say this particularly for women, right? Because the world of financial services, 95% users are men. So when AI picks up data and say you ask for a financial plan and I ask for a financial plan, we will both be given a plan that is more suited to men and their life stages, right? So for women, actually, it's even more challenging, which is why, it's even more important today for women to participate in the financial world, to use tools. So they make a large part of this data that AI is actually collecting and generating results from. So yeah, it could be very warped for a woman, but for a man and a woman, I think you need to use your own human intellect to tweak it further or to analyze and say, does this work to the T for me?
Yeah. So, like you said, that some human touch is going to be needed, but do you think in say 20 years, 30 years, when AI grows like rapidly, then do you think that people can just completely blindly trust AI with investing, or do you think they still are going to need like some sort of human touch?
I think human touch will always be necessary. Today, I don't think we blindly trust anything, right? Even today. So, especially when it comes to your money, I think it is very important. It will always be important for you to, I think the amount of hand holding that AI will be able to do, and in the ways it will interact in your life. So for example, you may have, I'm going to use the example of, what's that called? The tool. Okay, I'm going to use the example of Alexa, right? How it came into our homes. It helps us become more productive, but so it interacts with you at every sort of, I would say maybe different times of the day, right? You will interact with it, say, okay, play music for me. So it understands your music choice over a period of time. But initially you have to give it the cues. And therefore, I think AI will interact at every touch point with your life. The way it interacts may be very different. It is very, very possible that you open your refrigerator and you're taking out your meal, and then AI will say, okay, now we have to plan for the rest of your meal, so I'm going to order your meals. I'm going to, order it from the cheapest place, so I help you save money. And the money that is saved, I can invest for you, right? But even then, you will still have to make some choices that are personalized to you. So I'm not sure whether AI can ever become as human as humans.
Yeah.
And my gut feel is that that's not going to happen.
Finally, what do you think is like your end goal with Lakshmi, and where do you think it's going to reach?
So I think obviously the end goal is to have half our population, our country's population, create their financial security. See, for women, financial security is even more necessary than it is for men. Because, we have, like I was telling you, the map of life says you have one retirement. But for women anyways, there are many mini retirements, right? Their life is it's not linear. They take breaks. When we have children, we take breaks. When we get married, we take a break. So many breaks. We are caregivers even today, primary caregivers in families and households, right? So for them, I think managing money is even more important, creating their financial freedom, financial security. And the end goal for us in Lakshmi is that how do we help, one, create awareness within women that money management is their own responsibility. Second, how do we power women to start managing their money? And I think 450 million, 500 million women in this country. Even if we reach half of that population and they start investing their money, can you even imagine what it does to not just those women, but what it does to their families? So you have resilient families, you have strong communities, and you have a very, very strong economy, because all of that money adds to the economy. So we just recently released a report, Vivaan, which actually you should read. It was done with Ernst & Young and us. And the report very clearly says that if women start managing their money, they could easily add 4 lakh crores to our GDP. Now that's our end goal. How do we add 4 lakh crores to our GDP?
Yeah. So finally, you already have Lakshmi, which helps women. Do you think you're gonna have to expand or maybe help children also, or even men in the future?
Absolutely. Actually, children we are already helping, and that's the beauty about women, right? When they do anything, when they learn anything, or they realize the power of any knowledge, whom they want to bring it to first? Their children, right? So all the women on our platform, actually everything that they learn, they share it with their children. So on Lakshmi, we host a lot of financial literacy sessions for children. And now, like I told you, we enable them to understand, how do I create my education fund? How do I do this travel between saving money to growing my money to investing my money? So women and children, absolutely. I think we've already started that, getting children included. Men, eventually I think Lakshmi is a platform where families will manage their money, and men too. So in fact, a lot of men come to us and tell us that, why do you have only Lakshmi? Why don't you have a Lakshman?
Yeah.
So that we can also manage our money, because what we've done is actually made this into a very simple, time efficient journey. So a lot of the men also don't mind, investing here.
Yeah.
But today our primary goal is just women. And children, of course, get included in that, because for women it's never about themselves. But someday in the future, yes, especially as we build our AI tools, I think we will be able to create something for men as well. But our strength, today if in India anybody has the deepest insight into financial behavior of women, it is Lakshmi. So we want to use that to our strength, and that remains to be our 1-point mission in life.
Yeah. So how many people have been impacted by Lakshmi?
So we have about 12 lakh women on the platform, so 1.2 million women on the platform. And when it's 1.2 million women, you would actually assume that it is close to 3 million or 4 million people. Because like I said, when a woman learns, she starts understanding learning, she always shares it. She shares it with her community, with her children, with women around her. So the impact is actually 4x, 5x.
Yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the first part of this podcast.
Okay.
Now, there's a second part, which is agree to disagree.
Okay.
I'll give you a statement. You have to either say agree, disagree, or we can agree to disagree.
Okay.
Firstly.
So agree, disagree, or
We both can agree to disagree.
okay. Okay. Are you also going to say whether you agree or not? Okay. Okay.
Higher risk, higher the reward.
Agree.
If you're late by learning,
Yeah.
Okay. If you don't know financial literacy by 18, you're late.
Agree.
The most important part about being a businessman is to be resilient.
Sort of agree.
Okay.
Because you also have to have the risk-taking ability, right? And of course, resilience.
Okay. Teenagers today are better consumers than creators.
Teenagers today are better consumers for sure. I think teenagers today are consuming everything, especially knowledge, in a far, far better way than we were taught to. It's more holistic. So I would say that yes, absolutely.
AI will make fund managers irrelevant in the future.
Disagree.
Yeah. Talking about money in society should be as normal as talking about, say, fitness.
Absolutely agree. Super agree.
Financial freedom matters more than financial literacy.
Disagree, because if you don't have financial literacy, it'll be hard to get financial freedom.
Yeah. So thank you so much for this stunning podcast, and thank you for coming on Agree to Disagree. That brings us to the end of this podcast.
Super. Thank you for having me, and well done.